Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Tiger Sidelines. Alongside Dave Matter and Gabe DeArmond, I'm Bo Bayman. We'll start with the men's basketball team, where the team went 1-1, good enough to get the 10th seed in the SEC tournament. Let's talk about the game at Ole Miss first. Dave, you went to that game, a 75-67 loss, a game that I thought was pretty winnable, even in the late stretches of the game. They came back. They were trying to get over the hump. They just could never get over the hump in that game.
It was a terrible start, and then Ole Miss just couldn't hit a shot. And Missouri played really good defense. They just kind of woke up too late, and then they got on a bit of a run, but they just couldn't sustain it. It's kind of what we've seen in a handful of their road games, like kind of like the Arkansas game when they went there. Hey, good enough to not get blown out and to be competitive, but they never got the lead there, and they just couldn't get over the hump. And then they just had some really untimely bad turnovers that right on those moments where they couldn't afford to let something like that happen.
It was the tale of two halves. They scored a bunch in the first half but gave up a bunch, and then they couldn't score in the second half and held Ole Miss, so that's what made it a close game.
And this team is great at doing just enough to lose. Like they said, I mean, that's what bad teams do, and this is a bad team. You know, good teams win those games. Bad teams dig themselves a 17-point hole and then talk about, but boy, we sure came back and made it a 2-point game. It doesn't matter.
Then we all worshipped at the house of Reed Nico on Saturday, and they beat Alabama 69-50, a close game that all of a sudden they start hitting shots, the Tigers do down the stretch, and it ends up being 19 points.
Yeah, it was not, I think if you're an Alabama fan clinging to hope to the bubble, gosh, you lost it on that one. I mean, that team has scored 50 points in 3 different halves this year. They had 47 the first half against Missouri, and they finished with just 50. I mean, they weren't, that injuries, John Petty, he played 34 minutes, he didn't score, he had 1 point. They weren't the team that they were at its peak this year, but you got to give Missouri's defense some credit. They uglied that game up a little bit, and then just hit a bunch of shots down the stretch.
And the Tigers finished 15-19, 7-11 in the SEC. Not good enough.
15-16, but yeah, I mean, it is. If they lose to Texas A&M on Thursday, it is the identical record to last year. I mean, they won a couple more games in the league, in a bad league, but any more games that you won in the SEC is kind of wiped away by Charleston Southern. You know, so it is at best a step sideways from last year.
And again, that's not good enough.
No, it's not. And you can bring up the injuries. Everybody has them. This year's they weren't as destructive to the team as losing Jonte Porter. They've played better of late when they're healthy, but it's too little too late for this team to make anything positive really about it.
And I don't buy the injuries because they were actually better.
Yeah,
for their best stretch of basketball was without Tillman and Smith.
Yeah. And then that's the narrative. Where do they go from here? What do you look forward to next year?
You know, I mean, the hope is that all these guys are better next year than they had one guy finish shooting 30% from three-point range. One. Who took any meaningful number of three-pointers. So, you know, it really is as simple as they didn't make shots this year, so you hope that they make shots next year. But I asked a few of the guys a couple weeks ago, like, how do you become a better shooter other than just shooting every day? And there's nothing magical about it. You know, there are days when the best three-point shooting team in the SEC, Alabama, goes 4 for 21 or whatever they win. I mean, sometimes it happens. Now, it just happened almost every game to Missouri.
They have one senior leaving. That's Reed Nico. We'll talk about him in a second. But the narrative to me will be, well, we got everybody coming back. They're a year older. They're a year wiser. Might say, let's see it.
And that's kind of what it was going into this season too. Everybody's coming back except Jordan Geis, but you add Drew Smith and then a couple freshmen. So now, you know, there's only one freshman coming along, and he's kind of a mystery. He's big, Jordan Wilmore, but who knows if he can contribute and help. I think there's still some questions on who of the guys with the remaining eligibility will be back, and you hate to speculate, but you never know. And it wouldn't be unlike any other team in college basketball if there's some changes. I mean, that's just kind of how it works. But yeah, the core of this team we expect to be back, and the margin for what they are right now and what they could be is just those guys getting better.
And it's not like you're getting an influx of new talent at all.
I don't know if a concerning thing is right to say, but it became fairly obvious to me midway through this year when everybody knew Missouri wasn't going anywhere. Konzo thinks he has enough talent on this team. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to try to add to it. I mean, I think what could give you hope, if they can go out and find a scorer via the transfer market, whether that's traditional transfer and the legislation passes and he becomes eligible, or it's a grad transfer. I mean, those guys are out there every year, and Missouri has to go find one. If they don't add a transfer who's capable of getting you 10 to 15 points a night, I just don't see it, because everybody's going to assume what we saw out of Xavier Pinson in the last 10 games is what we're going to see every game. Well, next year, teams are going to draw up their scouting report to stop Xavier Pinson. And, they're going to draw up the scouting report to stop Drew Smith. And so once that happens, maybe those guys aren't quite as good next year as they were this year.
And the scouting report, if Jeremiah Tillman is back, will be go right at him, because he'll follow you and get him out of the game. And then there won't be a Reed Nickel there. Right. And let's talk about Big Reed. I mean, 4 years, came in, and really this year, I don't want to say broke out of his shell, but he became more than just a role player on this team.
Yeah, and if you look at just his starts this year, I think he was averaging like 7 points, 5 rebounds. Nobody's going to build a statue of him, but that is so much more productive than what he was the first 3 years in the program. He became a reliable guy. I mean, was he a difference maker every night? No. Did he hurt them every night? No, not at all. I think he became an asset in some games, certain matchups, and I think it was good for morale. I think people liked seeing that. I think it was just, he became kind of a leader within the team, not the most outspoken guy outside of the team, but just a kind of a good glue guy to have on your team. Now, those guys are appreciated more when you have more talent around them that are doing well. He can't be the story of the team, but a good ending for him nonetheless.
And a guy, to me, Gabe, that was really well respected by all the other teammates.
No question. I hate to be that guy, but when the story in this week is, hey, a guy who averaged, probably 5 and 3 for his career is leaving. I mean, I get it. It's senior day. You appreciate what he did. But the problem is that you've got a whole bunch of guys who are being asked to do more than they're capable of on this team. I mean, Reed Nicko is a good, second big man for a few minutes a night. Javon Pickett is like a little less talented JT Tiller type. The difference is JT Tiller was the 5th player on his team. Javon Pickett has to be more. So they've got a bunch of guys who I think could be parts of an NCAA tournament team, but they're asking them to be the best players on an NCAA tournament team, and that's not realistic.
And that's why they're not an NCAA tournament team. And that's why you're talking about Reed Nicko's senior day, and one of the other things that everybody talked about was the kid who made the putt for Bacon.
I mean, that was one of the highlights of the year.
Come on, that was impressive.
It was impressive.
How mad is he, though? The 80-year-old woman at Ole Miss got a car.
Yeah.
He gets like a pound of bacon. Well, I'm sure it's good bacon, don't get me wrong, but, you can't drive it.
That's right. So the 10th seed is where the Missouri Tigers fall. We all thought, at least I did, going into Saturday, I thought, okay, they're going to play on Wednesday. Here we go again. Well, they managed to get to Thursday anyway, where they'll play Texas A&M, and they've played Texas A&M twice. The game here was decent, but they're 0-2 against them.
Yeah, and as Konzo said the other night, he goes, well, we weren't in a good place when we played them back then. He feels like they're in a better place now, which you can, okay, Tillman didn't play the first game. The second game is when he came back and played like 8 minutes. They're coming off of a better situation right now than what they were at the time. A&M, though, I don't think it's a fluke, because they, all season long, they pack the paint and just say, go ahead, shoot threes, and we'll get the rebound.
Right.
And we feel good enough about our offense that we can outscore you. And it's worked for Buzz Williams. He does not have a super talented team, but they finished the 7th seed in a major conference in a year most people thought they'd be 12, 13, 14. So I think I voted for him for SEC Coach of the Year. It's a strategy that works, and it can definitely work against a team like Missouri that doesn't shoot well from 3.
That was going to be my next point, was I think he's going to get some major votes for Coach of the Year.
I don't know how you could make an argument for anybody else. I mean, I guess you could say John Calipari won it, but John Calipari's supposed to win it. He has the best players in the league, and this was not as good a Kentucky team as a lot of them are. I think Buzz did the best job in this league, and, I've seen a lot of, and I understand everybody does this come tournament time. I mean, if you got to be the 10 seed, our path is pretty good. Well, the first game's against a team that beat you twice. Second game, I understand you beat Auburn without their best player at home. Third game's LSU, who played all of 5 minutes and beat. I mean, stop talking about what this team might do. This team has never made Saturday in the SEC tournament. I see no reason to expect that this will be the year it does.
I I can see them not making Friday very easily.
Absolutely.
I think the way this team is built, and when they play really well, when they're physical, like say that Illinois game, that's the type of team you don't want to play after you just played the night before. You just don't.
Yeah.
But A&M will be fresh. They have a bye. Auburn has a double bye, so they will be fresh. They will be the fresher team. Now, if you get into Saturday, then LSU just played the night before. But at that point, that's just more hope than anything, because nothing this team has done would suggest they beat a couple quality SEC teams away from home back-to-back nights.
Yeah, breaking news, over 32 games, all those teams were better than Missouri was.
Right. No doubt about it. So that game will be Thursday at 6 o'clock. We'll see what happens. They'd play Auburn if they win. The women's season is over. They finished with 9 wins, 5 wins in the SEC. They did win a game at the SEC tournament, but then fell to Tennessee. The season comes to a crashing halt. 9 wins, I think I read, is the lowest
Tied for
ever.
the lowest.
Tied for the lowest ever. Nobody saw that coming. And I mean, I know it's a rebuilding year. They went into it saying it's not a rebuilding year, but still, 9 wins is 9 wins.
It is, and then they weren't even close to the worst team in the SEC. So I mean, what that tells you is they did play a pretty tough non-conference schedule, and Robin has really made that point a lot lately. And she thinks it impacted the team's confidence, and that it worked against them big time. And almost sounds like she wasn't blaming anybody, but really, really regrets that schedule. Nonetheless, 9 is 9, and the last time they won 9 games was their first season of existence when they were 9-8. So this really is unprecedented for this program.
And going forward, yes, the core is there, especially with the 2 youngsters in Asia Blackwell and Haley Frank. So there is some pieces infusing here. So you can see it that way, which we've talked about ad nauseum a little bit, but still, they got to learn how to win.
Well, I was looking at it a little bit for next year, and this is almost, obviously they didn't do it intentionally, but this is almost that team that was like, they were pretty good. They were always making the playoffs, but never really making a run, and said, you know what? The best way for us to be better is to just be off. Let's tank for a year.
Yeah, right.
And because this should be an NCAA tournament team next year. Yeah. I mean, Haley Frank and Asia Blackwell are coming off all SEC freshman seasons. You're adding 3 transfers. You've got people like Nadia Green, Elle Brown, who are going to have a year. Like, the goal next year is clearly going to be NCAA tournament. So you could have 4 NCAA tournaments, worst year in school history, NCAA tournament. Now, look, if it doesn't turn out to be that way, if they're sitting next year sub 500, then you're going to have some real questions about what the future is. But next year, they should be good.
It's almost like the schedule this year was to get them a strength of schedule to get in, and it backfired.
Yeah, I think that was the plan. Because she thought the seniors would kind of step up and not replace Sophie's production, but together sort of add up and okay, well that's what they lost. Here's what they're getting. Those seniors, they didn't really get better. I mean, I've heard Robin say before they used to have Batman and Robin. Well, she needed all the Robins to become Batman, and they did not do that this year. Instead, the freshmen became Batman, and they're freshmen. So I think the hope is that these 3 transfers are sitting. They have to all be better than the seniors that they're losing. If they do, then you're a better team.
And the good news is, to me, Blackwell and Frank did get better as the year went on. I mean, they played as freshmen early, but then as the season went on, they were playing pretty well.
Well, and they were both better in SEC play statistically than they were in non-conference play. Now, the one thing that really jumped out, I had to look at this number like 6 times because I thought this can't be right. Asia Blackwell had 138 turnovers and like 60 some odd assists. I mean, I understand she has the ball a lot, and that's really been a team-wide thing. Even Robin's good teams. I mean, Sophie would have games with 8, 9 turnovers, and you're just giving away so many possessions.
I think part of it, the hope is she's not a natural point guard, but she had to play this year. Shug Dixon, the transfer from, she's been at both Texas Tech and Tulsa, will be the point guard next year. So the hope is those turnovers cut down. She wasn't a very efficient player. She took a lot of shots, got a lot of fouls, but she led them in every other category. So she's very productive. She just does the bad stuff a lot too.
And as we mentioned, they finished the year with 9 wins, and they'll move on to next year. And really, next year has already begun for them, even without the tournament coming up. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll check your tweets. You're watching Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back, everybody. Gabe DeArmond, Dave Matter, and I'm Bo Bayman. You're watching Tiger Sidelines. We're at Tiger Sidelines on Twitter, and our first tweet comes to us from Jackson, who says, prior to Braun's two-game breakout should probably be in quotes, PB's mom tweets hidden displeasure with the coaching staff at his playing time, and they're unhappy and flipping the bird, and will Parker Braun transfer?
You know, a lot of things were way better before everybody was a reporter and everything had to be on social media and talk. Like, look, I don't know, this kind of stuff, this is what Conzo Martin gets paid $3 million to deal with. And frankly, if the 11th guy on the roster on a bad team is unhappy about how much he's playing, it's up to Conzo to decide whether he cares if he transfers or not. Yeah. I just don't care about any of it. It's all middle school drama.
I mean, it goes back to, I think we've mentioned this before. It's like Eric Musselman had said before. He only has 9, 10 guys in his rotation. They're on scholarship because it's not worth the drama to deal with number 11 through 13 because everybody wants to play. And he made the comment this season that he'd go in the locker room after wins and everybody should be excited. There's 4 guys unhappy every time. And that's just the reality of college basketball today. I think that's why the transfer market is so bloated every year. And that's what happens. You can't play everybody all the time.
And this is where, we could do a whole show on this, but this is where we get into, in our role, I mean, if Dave and I could write books about everything we've heard we don't write, because it's just, none of it matters. And a lot of it doesn't need to be public.
Absolutely. Jason says, I kind of like this one. If you were AD at Mizzou, what's one thing you would change and why?
I would win more games. I mean,
and why?
Because losing games is way worse.
I would, and you somehow have to make sure they show up. I'd put more students on the sideline for basketball games. I saw it at Ole Miss last week. I mean, they had maybe 4,000 people there, but they had a packed student section right across from where the camera shoots down, and they were up and active the whole game. And you don't get that at Missouri. Instead, you've got the high-dollar donors sit down there, and most of them don't show up for games.
Right.
So I'd not all the students, but put some section of students there right across the bench.
Well, and in all seriousness, the one thing I do as AD at Missouri is, and there's a lot of people that are going to hate this answer, I would pick, I don't care whether it's football or men's basketball, pick one. And every dime I have goes into that program so I can be great at that program and then bring up. Missouri for decades has thought, let's just be good across the board. And the truth is, nobody cares if you're good at soccer and volleyball and swimming, and nobody cares. It doesn't matter. And I understand wrestling is kind of self-sufficient, so that's not draining a lot of money. But I mean, and how much money did they spend on a new softball stadium? That's cool, but to me, pour it into one of the 2 sports that is going to make you money. Look at Kansas's athletic department. I don't know if they're good at anything besides men's basketball, but that sustains the entire thing because they're really good at that.
Yeah, I think if this is going to be unpopular, I'd knock down Hearns. That'd be the first thing I would do. I mean, that thing is so old, I'd build something new there, but I'd knock down Hearns and give something to gymnastics, give something to wrestling, give something to volleyball, and just make it a little bit better. All right, our next one from Scott. I know it's just 1 or 2 practices in, but do you guys have a feel for if you'll have more access to Mizzou football, or have you been told about how much access you'll have?
Well, let's talk about what access means. Yeah. We can be there for an hour. We can request players. I've requested 16 in the first 2 days. I've talked to, I think, 5 of them. So, look, and, hey, we asked the question, so don't complain that we're complaining about it. It is what it is, but coaches think access means, hey, they can just come and kind of take a look, and we don't care to take a look. We just want to talk to people. We can't talk to quarterbacks and whatever.
I think if you look at a chart over time of access for any program, and in general, it's always going to go down. It doesn't matter the coach, doesn't matter how colorful or engaging or how much fun he has on social media, it's never going to go back up. Right. So you just kind of take what you get at this point, and you try to do your job the best you can. But so far through what we've been to 2 days, it's kind of hit or miss as far as talking to people.
And it's similar. It's not worse than
it's not worse.
Yeah. It was interesting. They said no access to quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that's, I've always kind of thought, those are the guys that are your leaders. It's the most pressure-packed position. It's if he can't talk to me in March, how's he going to be quarterbacking against, Georgia?
And I don't get it too when you try to say every job is open, everything is competitive. you can talk to these running backs all you want, but not the quarterback.
Right.
So it sets itself up to be, a difference there that really should there be.
But in the end, the truth is, this is something people talk about in March because there's nothing else to talk. Nobody cares. And nobody cares who we get to talk to. I mean, it really doesn't matter.
Best road breakfast sandwich from where?
Every breakfast on the road, I eat at the Hampton Inn because it's free.
Because it's free.
That's a good point. Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
Same as a Drury. If you stay at a Drury,
I'm all
free
about the
breakfast.
Fairfield Marriott points.
There you go. Here's one that says, which Mizzou football players appear most likely to have the most improvement working with the new system? And prior to game one, how much attention do you think Coach Drink plans to devote to pumping up the student fan base chance of success?
I mean, the answer to question number one is we have no idea.
Right.
Eli Drinkwitz told us after the first day, nobody's winning a job. I'm just trying to figure out who these guys are.
And then teach them how to get lined up.
Yeah, the one thing I appreciate about Drinkwitz is he said on day one, this spring football, you're not going to find anything important now.
Right, and eliminate anybody on defense from that question because coaches aren't going to do something new and magical that have already been here. So it'd have to be on offense. And really, I mean, I don't know. They're still going to run the ball and they're still going to throw the ball. So it's not like it's going to be that different. There'll be differences internally in formations and things like that. But I don't think coaching style is really going to change, get more production out of certain players.
And as far as pumping up the students, look, that's the one thing. Missouri's never had a salesman as the head football coach. He is a salesman. He's doing a good job of it. And I kind of think there's only two ways you win over a fan base. Either you win a ton of games or you have the public-facing personality that he seems to have right now. Pinkel won a lot of games. Odom didn't really do either one. We don't know if Drinkwitz is going to win games, but he has the personality.
And he's really taken over to the social media, and you have to give him credit. Like the other day, he said he's in front of all the students, and he says MIZ, and the students say beat Tennessee to the women's.
Right.
He's really embraced the whole athletic department, which is something Missouri fans haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, he gets it. And I think, and Gabe's made this point before, it's always been this way since he's been a coach. He hasn't had to adapt to the new technology or the new medium because that's just always been there present since he got into coaching. Gary Pinkel, that wasn't the case. I mean, he had to arrive late on the scene. And even Conzo Martin and to some degree Barry Odom, he's only 5 years older than Drinkwitz, but I think his natural inclination is to not do that kind of stuff, and where Drinkwitz realizes I've got to do this because this is what kids want.
And this is all well and good until they lose to South Carolina. And then
Right, absolutely.
I mean,
Thanks for all your tweets. Don't forget we're at Tiger Sidelines, especially during a game, after a game. We're always here for you. We'll take a break. We'll talk about the Diamond Sports when we come back right here on Tiger Sidelines on MT22. Welcome back, everybody. Dave, Gabe, and Bo here. Let's start with wrestling. How about a dynasty? You want to talk about a dynasty? Missouri Wrestling wins the MAC championship again. They're only the, 9th straight conference tournament that they've won. Brian Smith does it again. They qualify 6 for the NCAA championships. 2 more will need the wild card. The NCAAs start Thursday, March 19th, but they do it again. Brock Mahler, by the way, was the lone MAC champion. Yeah. It was kind of winning ugly, but they did win ugly.
Yeah, the MAC should really make a really, really nice, big second-place trophy because that's what everybody there is wrestling for. And I think this year, that margin was 21 points. So it was well decided, even though they only did have one champion. That was interesting.
They can go have a tournament with the second-place team in Big 12 basketball every year.
It makes me wonder if Missouri is going to leave the MAC in wrestling and go somewhere else. I don't know where they would go.
Right.
Big 12 won't have them back, but maybe they go somewhere else.
You think back to, I bet Brian Smith would have loved Missouri in the Big Ten.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
I mean, because that would have elevated his program. He wouldn't have won it every year. But.
Right.
Absolutely. Softball sweeps the week by beating UMKC and then sweeping Ole Miss. 3-0 in the SEC, 19-6 overall. They play Illinois on Wednesday, and then they're at Auburn starting on Saturday. It's a good start for Larissa Anderson.
Yeah, I think they're up to 15 in the nation in one of the polls, and it's been really impressive.
Steve Beezer's team hosts Northern Illinois starting Tuesday, but they swept 3 games from Western Illinois. Then they open SEC play at Alabama this weekend. And again, you can only beat who's on your schedule, and They had to get 3 wins this week, and they did.
That's a lot of Illinois on
Yes.
that. It's too bad those Eastern Illinois is not in the SEC. Need some conference realignment there.
They're 9-5 on the year, but the good thing is they're getting the pitching and they're getting some timely hitting.
Yeah, Peter Zimmerman's off to a great start, and Brant Belk, that first baseman they brought in. So yeah, it's a whole new looking lineup. I mean, if you went to games last year and paid attention, you're not going to recognize many names,
right.
but they're hitting the ball.
It's just such a weird season for both those teams, though, because look, they're already niche sports that you've got to kind of be a diehard to follow, and now I think probably even some of those people are a little bit checked out just because there's just nothing at the end.
Yeah, the end is the end, no
Right.
doubt about it. The final thing, we'll go to our correspondent Dave on this.
Oh, no.
Gymnastics wins at number 19, Nebraska, 196.450 to 195.925. Tigers now 6-9 overall,
Yeah.
0-6 in the league still, but they travel to Georgia on Saturday.
Well, they're doing really well. That's a big win to win at Nebraska. It was at Nebraska?
Yeah,
Well,
at Nebraska.
That's very impressive. 196 and up, always good. So things are looking good.
I know Georgia's really good at gymnastics. They had a documentary done about their gymnastics program. I think that's probably the only one. I don't know.
And a loss would
I'll go
make
with
it
that.
0-7
You would think,
in the SEC and still ranked in the top 20, more than likely. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Tiger Sidelines. Off to the SEC tournament. We'll see what happens with Mizzou in Nashville. For Dave Matter and Gabe DeArmond and Bill and Matt and Brian behind the scenes, I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks as always for watching Tiger Sidelines right here on MC22.